Local groups give input on minimum wage changes. Major changes to the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund. And Canada finalizes a new European trade deal. Good evening, thank you for being with us. The Provincial Minimum Wage Advisory Panel was in Thunder Bay today. They're here to listen to local businesses, laborers, and community advocates.
Minimum wage currently sits at $10.25 an hour and hasn't been changed since 2010. However, local residents are making it clear that those living off minimum wage are struggling to make ends meet. Courtney Rutherford reports.
The first is that we would like to see the minimum wage raised to $14 an hour.
Steve Mantis is the treasurer of the Thunder Bay and District Injured Workers Support Group. Mantis went before the Minimum Wage Advisory Panel to show his support when it comes to increasing minimum wage and pegging it to inflation on an annual basis.
What that would do is that would put people, a single person making minimum wage for 40 hours a week, right on the edge of the poverty line. Right now, you're making minimum wage, you're in poverty.
Mantis wasn't the only one making a presentation. Poverty-Free Thunder Bay held a meeting Wednesday to hear the struggles of those surviving on minimum wage. They brought the results that were collected over the past few days to show the panel the problems that people in the city are facing. Beth Potter is one of the members of the advisory panel. She says their goal is to listen to people who are willing to share their thoughts on how they should structure minimum wage moving forward.
We are actually looking at the mechanism of minimum wage today, and that's what we're looking for ideas and suggestions on how that might be handled going forward. And the panel's responsibility is to come up with those recommendations to advise the ministry.
The local Chamber of Commerce is asking for increases every 2 years based on inflation. Potter says they plan on bringing all the information from the discussions to the ministry before the end of this year. And after that, it's up to the province to determine which course of action to take. Courtney Rutherford, TBT News.
A program that's invested nearly $900 million into the North in the past decade is in for some changes. The province says it's enhancing the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund. Those who have utilized the agency in the past say they hope it'll make funding easier to access. Dennis Ward has more on the changes.
Are actually here because...
Have you kids seen an undead creature?
Seriously?
A Little Bit Zombie was the brainchild of Thunder Bay producer-director Casey Walker. Walker received assistance from the Heritage Fund in 2011 to help bankroll the movie, and without it, he says, he couldn't have made the movie he wanted. It's now been screened in 43 international film festivals and won 11 awards. He says the changes to the Northern Business Opportunity Program can still help him and others in the future.
We are starting to cater our approach for financing more towards the changes that the NOHFC has made. Why fight the system? Work with the system.
In all, 5 NOHFC programs are being enhanced. Chair Michael Gravel says Northern leaders have given the thumbs up to the changes, and he's anticipating a ton of applications starting next week. Nipigon Mayor Richard Harvey hopes the application process becomes less of a maze. Municipalities want to know how to get the funding, what qualifies, and what are the chances of approval before spending their own money. But when a government says it's enhancing a program, red flags are often raised.
You always have concerns. We'll have to keep a very good eye on this whole project to make sure that it doesn't end up being more difficult to get funding, and that, you know, one of the things that can sometimes happen is when things are so-called enhanced is that you can have the funding process become so specific that a lot of projects can't fit in.
Gravel says the priorities of the $100 million fund will remain the same, focused on creating jobs and building a more diverse economy.
We've had well over 5,000 projects. We've created or retained 22,000 jobs. But can we do a better job? I think we can.
Dennis Ward, TBT News.
Groups across the country, including here in Thunder Bay, are holding rallies to support protesters in New Brunswick. On Thursday, RCMP arrested at least 40 people after police vehicles were set on fire in the eastern part of the province. The dispute in New Brunswick is over shale gas exploration. Protesters want Southwestern Energy to stop seismic testing so that could lead to the fracking of natural gas deposits. The violent outbursts yesterday came after police enforced a court-ordered injunction. Today, at the Thunder Bay offices of the Ontario Native Women's Association, a sacred fire was lit in solidarity of those in New Brunswick. Erin Bottle is one of the organizers of the event.
It angered me to what was happening. It was right on national media. Canadians, this is what Stephen Harper is going to do to us when we stand up to protect the earth. This is what he will do to us. He'll send those police to us. We need to come together.
Organizers say over 50 people took part in the event over the course of the day. Other demonstrations have taken place in Winnipeg and Southern Ontario. We'll have more on the situation in New Brunswick later on in the news hour.
Emergency officials in Fort Frances are dealing with a train derailment and hazardous goods spill. It happened this afternoon at the Resolute Forest Products mill when a single rail car tipped over, resulting in a hydrogen peroxide leak. OPP say they've set up a perimeter around the area as fire and rescue officials try to suppress the escape of vapors and monitor the leak. In the meantime, the public's being asked to stay away from the area.
Details of a major year-long drug investigation have been released. At a news conference in Kenora today, it was announced 38 individuals have been arrested and 174 criminal code and drug-related charges have been laid. As well, $230,000 worth of marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and morphine have been seized, along with $18,000 in cash and 4 vehicles. Police say the investigation, which involved the RCMP, OPP, Dryden Police, Treaty 3 Police, and the Anishinaabe Police, has disrupted a major trafficking ring between Winnipeg and Kenora.
Some residents and businesses on the city's north side were without power for a short period this morning thanks to a motor vehicle collision. It happened on Cumberland Street shortly after 2 o'clock when a vehicle struck 3 hydro poles. The driver then fled the scene on foot. Police continue to look for a suspect.
Municipal workers in Scriber could be hitting the picket lines if an agreement isn't reached between the town and the union. QP Local 87 has asked for a conciliator to assist in what both sides call difficult negotiations. The 13 municipal workers voted 100% in favor of a strike if an agreement can't be reached. The union says Scriber Council is seeking concessions from employees, including cuts to benefits. A statement released from QP questions management practices in regards to the town's finances, including a failure to collect taxes from many contributors. Mayor Don MacArthur is refusing to comment on the financial issues.
The issue that they raised around tax arrears is more a symptom of an overall economic problem in Scriber. And we have economic problems in Scriber. We've been doing our best to work through those, and certainly we appreciate all the efforts of our staff.
Conciliation talks have been scheduled for November 12th.
It's that time of year again. The annual flu shot clinics run by the Thunder Bay District Health Unit will begin on Monday. Manager of Infectious Disease Diana Gowanlock says they usually administer about 10,000 flu shots to the public each year. Another 40,000 doses of the influenza vaccine are distributed across the district to hospitals, pharmacies, and doctors' offices. She says there are always 3 strains in each vaccine.
Of influenza A virus and 1 strain of B. The A strains are the same as last year, and the B is slightly different. So, and they're, I'm sure you've heard this in the past, but they're, researched through the World Health Organization and stuff throughout the year, and they, do their, best scientific approach of what strains are going to be circulating again this year, and they make the vaccine based on that.
The first flu shot clinic goes Monday afternoon at the Italian Cultural Center from 2 o'clock until 7. There's another one at that same location on Tuesday morning, followed by the West Thunder Community Center Thursday afternoon. The latest schedule of flu shot clinics can be found on the Health Unit's special website, thunderbayflu.ca.
The Thunder Bay Regional Research Institute is now in its 6th year, and researchers are starting to see the fruits of their labor. Board members and management hosted the Institute's 6th annual retreat at the Regional Hospital today. And for the first time, a variety of homegrown research was presented to colleagues and community partners. Over the past 5 years, the Institute has relied solely on out-of-town guest speakers to present cutting-edge research from elsewhere around the world. But acting CEO Roxanne Delorier says the Institute has now reached a point where much of the research carried out here in Thunder Bay is being integrated into the hospital to directly improve patient care. That's resulted in more international attention for the local research institute.
I had the opportunity to speak at an innovation conference in Brussels this year. And that has led to a couple of features on the Thunder Bay Regional Research Institute in their innovation publication, which again, it's read by people all around the world. So I think that's a good measure of how we're moving beyond Thunder Bay, we're moving beyond Canada and getting some recognition internationally.
Delorier says the Institute continues to make great strides in fields like molecular imaging, Aboriginal health, as well as mental health and addictions, to name a few.
For the past 21 years, the Loon of Hope has supported women across northwestern Ontario who have been diagnosed with breast cancer. The event raises tens of thousands of dollars each year for research, education, and treatment. This year's keynote speaker is comedian, broadcaster, and breast cancer survivor Maureen Holloway. She says maintaining a sense of humor throughout the process helped her to cope.
Maintaining a sense of humor, or developing one if you didn't have one before you started, is probably the best way that you can deal with the particular challenges that cancer. I mean, there's nothing really funny about cancer, but there's lots that's funny about the cancer experience and coping and trying to pass and whether to tell your friends and not to, how to deal with your family. I mean, life throws all sorts of curveballs at you.
Over 600 women and men attended today's luncheon. Money from today's luncheon goes straight to the Cancer Care campaign that will help the regional hospital obtain the most up-to-date treatment technology. Cancer Care officials say thanks to programs like these, breast cancer survival rates in and around Thunder Bay are some of the highest in the entire province.
Ontario residents, including those in Thunder Bay, can expect to see their hydro bills go up beginning next month. The Ontario Energy Board has announced new electricity prices across the province. The typical household can expect to see an increase of $4 or about 3% on the electricity line of their monthly bill. The increase coincides with the autumn change in peak times. Starting November 1st, the most expensive hours will switch to breakfast and supper times, and mid-peak moves to midday.
It often starts as a one-person business in somebody's basement, but those ideas can blossom and end up creating more jobs many times over. Now, over the next week, small businesses in Thunder Bay will be recognized for their contribution to our local economy. Today, Mayor Keith Hobbs proclaimed it BDC Small Business Week. Workshops to help small businesses grow and events to celebrate successes will be held all next week. John Garashi is the manager of the local Business Development Bank of Canada. He says small businesses make up a huge chunk of the local economy.
You're looking at least 4,000 to 5,000 businesses minimum. There is quite a bit going on, and there are a lot of businesses that people don't necessarily see. Just because they don't have a storefront or they don't have a location, that doesn't mean they're not working from their basement. So we do see that a lot.
BDC estimates there are more than 800,000 entrepreneurs in Canada, with 1 in 10 people owning their own business.
School buses have an obvious connection with learning and education, but there's an old school bus that's taking it to another level. Back in August, we told you about a local teacher who was outfitting an old bus with environmentally friendly features. It's aptly called the Eego Bus, and today it hit the road for the first time. Matt Scooby has the story.
It's been years in the making, but Kat Leonard finally got to put her project into action at a Cole Grand Morgan today.
The Eego Bus is basically a mobile environmental ed center that travels around northwestern Ontario to schools, making it easy for teachers to access that kind of field trip. And today we're doing some learning about waste reduction. We're learning about the natural resources that go into the products that we use every day.
The bus features all kinds of eco-friendly features, like a small wind turbine and solar panel on the roof to help power the electrical. A teacher herself, Leonard has developed and runs the program and plans to take the bus all across northwestern Ontario.
I think it's important for students to just have a taste of alternatives out there. There's always different ways of doing things. Sometimes they're better, and it's just important to be creative in solving some of the problems or challenges, environmental challenges that we have. And so I'm excited to just give students an idea of what that might look like.
Vice Principal of Grand Morgan, Darren Lentz, loves the idea and practicality of the bus. He also says it's a great way to kick off Waste Reduction Week, which begins on Monday.
It really teaches them and gets it ingrained in their head the real reason why we want energy conservation, why we want to see recycling, why it's important. It gets that hands-on, kinesthetic, tactile learning.
In the spring, the upgrades will continue. Leonard is planning to add a waste vegetable oil fuel system. It will allow the bus to run on waste oil from restaurants and catering companies in town. Matt Scooby, TBT News.